the normal reports and analytics work area. So if this is how the report appears in the normal reports and analytics work area, and if you click on more, you don't see a customize option. But you see a customize option when you try to access it from XMLP server. And how do you execute it? What you need to do is you need to click on this customize button. And what will happen when you click on customize is this particular folder path. So you see this folder path, right? So this entire folder path will be created under a custom folder. Okay, so we are currently in shared folders directly, right? Under shared folder, there is a custom folder, which again I said will be available out of the box. And to that custom folder, this report will be copied over. And the folder structure will remain same. And what that means is if this folder structure does not exist, so if you don't have a financials folder under custom, it gets created. And under that payables gets created, payments gets created, and a payment register report gets copied over to the custom location. So let's click on customize now. And after that, yes, you can download the template from here. And if you look at what happened in the background, if you click on catalog, you go to custom folder now. And under custom folder, if you go to FT14, sorry, not FT14, financials, yeah, expanded. And under financials, payables, expanded. And you see this folder didn't exist earlier, but it got created just now, and it was created by us. So that's because when you clicked on customize, it tries to create this folder structure. It tries to copy this report with the same folder structure into custom folder. And since payments folder doesn't exist under payables folder, it got created. And if you expand it, you will be able to see the report copied over there. And from here, you can edit the report and customize it. And how do you customize it? You click on the edit button, and that will download the template. And that's how I downloaded this template, right? So you need to make the change that the client has asked for. Say, for example, client has asked you to change the logo. You take it off, insert a new one. So say, for example, let's insert the training institute logo, and you make other changes. Say, for example, they've asked you to change the label as well. So change that. And in here, say, for example, client has asked you to, or he told that a zip code is not required, or address line 2 is not required, or city is not required, or probably he might ask you to take off one of the field. So deleting them is quite easy, right? So you can take them off easily. So all you need to do is take it off. Okay. But in case you need to add in a new field, okay, that's what everyone would be asking me. In case you have to add a new field, taking out is easy. All you need to do is delete it. In case client wants to add a new field and display it in here, you need to customize the data model also. Okay, so we copied this report, but this report is still referring to the data model, seeded data model. So what you need to do is you need to copy the data model also, make a copy of it to the custom folder, and then you give a different name to that data model. Maybe you can prefix your customer name in front of it, and in that data model you will be able to see the queries in there, right? You will be able to see the query in there. Okay, you can see the queries in there. And in those queries, if you want to add in additional fields, add in those additional fields, and then you will refer to that particular field in this template if required. In most of the scenarios, it will be only the layout customizations that might be required. But in some cases, in case some additional fields also need to be displayed, you might also have to change the data model. If you change the layout alone, you don't need to register a new ESS job. But in case you change the data model as well, then it is recommended rather to create a new ESS job with your new data model, which is a copy of this. because if you do it that way, you are leaving out the data model given by Oracle intact, so that if you run the seeded job, it gets printed with a seeded template. If you run your custom job, it gets printed with a custom template. It works that way. And we have changed this template now, right? And let me save this template. Let me save it to the BIP reports, and I will save it with a custom name. And after this, you guys know what you have to do. So when you're uploading the template, don't use the add new layout option available here, because if you click on it, you see this error message. Okay, it's basically a bug. If you go to the data model and if you verify, there is sample data in fact, but the error says data model doesn't contain sample data. So don't try to use the intelligence and try to resolve this error. It's basically a bug. If you go to the data model, there is already a sample data file existing in there. Okay, so don't try to resolve this. Close it. Go to view a list option and click on the plus icon here and upload a new template. So we have a new template ready to upload. So you go to that folder structure and you pick up that file. So we have it in BIP reports folder. Upload the RTF document and select the type as RTF and locally as English United States and upload it. And what else you need to do? You have to mark this. Now that we have two templates, to ensure that the custom template gets picked up as a default one, you go to view a list and you make it as a default template and you change the output type to PDF and you save it. After you make this change, if you go ahead and run the report now, enter the parameters and kick off the job again. Okay, the job completed. Okay, we need to open up a new session for the changes to get reflected, but it's still picking up an old template. So you sign out. Submit the job one more time. And you should see that your custom template gets picked up and the output gets generated with the new or with the custom layout that you have uploaded, wherein you should see the client logo and other changes that you have done. Okay, you could see that the custom template has been picked up. And if you want to look at the output, click on it. And you could see the output generated with a custom layout now. So this is how you customize a seeded report. Okay, any questions, guys? Yes, Krishna, please go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of questions, Prasad. One is the data models or the reports that you mentioned when it goes to the custom, and when Oracle kind of puts their new versions, and if the original report or the data model is changed, so I think we definitely then have to retrofit these customizations, right?
Correct.
And if the data model or the original report is impacted, then definitely the custom one that needs to be readjusted to kind of ensure that the new functionality is delivered, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to do it again in case something changes. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any tool, because we might create a lot of custom reports, is there any tool where it will kind of provide, okay, these are the reports that changed or as a part of this new version, so that it is easy rather than going like every custom report and every data layout to compare? Does Oracle provides any tools, Prasad, to do that?
It doesn't provide tools, but it provides release notes. There's no such tool available, but every release will have a detailed release notes given by Oracle, which tells you what reports have been modified or updated. So you can look at them and see if you have modified any one of them, then you can probably take a look at it. And they also mention what change they have done inside the report as well. So you can probably take it upon if it makes sense for you.
And is it common that I suppose even data models will change, right, based on the functionality or the underlying technical changes, right? So, okay. And my question again, regarding the deployment of these things. So, is there any tool in Oracle that that we can utilize to deploy these the new data models and the new reports, or they should be rebuilt in the production environment?
No, I've shown you how to migrate reports using catalog files, right? When we started off today's session. I'm not sure if you have
I joined a little bit late, so probably I'll catch up. I'll probably check in the catch-up video then. Thank you.
Yeah, look at it's an automated way. The report code units, you don't need to build them again. Otherwise, it will be utter nonsense, right? So yes, we have an automated way.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you.
I've shown it. Just look at the recording. If you have any doubts, we can discuss it. Yeah.
Will do. Thanks, Prasad.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, Prasad, Nagarjuna. No, in report level, if you want
yes,
like a footer, so every page it has to header and footer, so that we need to modify in the Word document.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, in the Word document, you have to modify them. So you see this Word document. This is the body. This is the body, and this is the header, and this is a footer. So if client asks you to put something like a page number here, or say the client their logo or some terms and conditions about their line, or any line for that matter, if they want you to edit the header and a footer, you will have to upload them here. In fact, we have uploaded it only in the first one, because this and in a layout you can mention, or in RTF layout you can have header which is different in first page from the second page. So that's why when we change the header in the first page, it didn't get updated in the second page. But if you update it here, it gets updated everywhere there. But yes, you can change the options here.
Okay. Yeah. And instead of customize, that we can archive that standard one, seeded one, and unarchive into some our custom folder.
Correct.
Can we do
exactly.
That?
Yes, you can do that as well, but we typically use a customize option if it is only a layout change. If it is only a layout change, if you click on customize, it is already doing that bit for you, right? Why do you want to go through that process of downloading the catalog and uploading it again? If it is a data model also that you want to customize, then also you follow the same process. Go to data model, click on it, and then click on customize, rather than you uploading and downloading the catalog files. But when you need to migrate it from one instance to another instance, then yes, it makes sense to use the catalog files. Okay, so when you're customizing it initially, use the customize button that I have shown you. You test it. If you customize only the layout, you don't need to register a new ESS job. But if you also modify a data model, we usually register a new ESS job. Okay.
If someone want to also customize the same one, again it will be regenerated over there, na? Like another.
No. They will not regenerate it. You usually work as a team, and there will be only one or two developers working in a AR reports team, maybe. So you will work in coordination. If you click on customize, it might. I don't think it overrides it. If the folder already exists, yeah, that layout might not get copied over. But if you go in there, you will notice that someone has already made some changes, and you can put your changes on top of it, or you can get in touch with them and you can coordinate with them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, hi Prasad, Pragati here. So when there is a patch or upgrade, does the my folder also get impacted?
No, your custom folder won't get impacted, and it's because of that reason only. If you think of why is this happening when you click on customize, the question you asked is precisely the reason. When Oracle applies some patches or does something, whatever might be there in the standard folders might get impacted. If you have put in some customizations in the standard folders, you might risk losing them. I'm not saying that with every patch or every upgrade you will lose it, but there is a risk. But for that reason only, if you follow this standard process that I have shown you just now, it gets copied over to custom, and this custom folder under shared folders is upgrade proof folder. Anything you place in custom, Oracle will not touch it.
Okay, got it. Might be I missed that point. Okay,
Yeah. It's not on the entire shared folders, only on the custom folder.
Custom folder. Okay.
Yeah, Prasad. So if we implement ERP Cloud, they give a test instance, ERP instance by default, or we have to buy a new instance?
We have to at the time of design itself, it will be worked out as to how many instances client needs. Again, it depends. Usually clients will have one instance for every milestone, like one for dev, one for SAT, one for UAT, and one for prod. But in some cases, if it's not a very complex project, clients might do with 3 instances alone. They might use one for both dev and SIT, and one for UAT, and one for production. But at least there will be 3 instances in scope for every Fusion implementation, from whatever I've seen in my experience. But yes, you need to, when you opt for ERP Cloud license, you will mention to Oracle as to how many instances you need and by what date you need, and you will also have that refresh cycle as well, right? So at some point you might want to ask Oracle to put whatever is there in SIT in the dev instance, so that whenever or whatever is there in UAT, you will ask them to dump it to SIT, so that if you get some UAT issue, you can work on it or debug it in SIT instance. So that refresh process will also be worked out. All of it will go into the initial planning of the project.
So is sandbox different than development instance?
That is, sandbox is a completely different concept. It is basically an option that you can use to customize the user interface. It has got nothing. Sandbox is some people call the dev instance as a sandbox, or a CRP instance as a sandbox. But in as far as technical consultants are concerned, we use sandbox. There is a different concept itself called sandbox, which is typically used to do UI customizations. That sandbox is different from the instance sandbox. Some people might call dev instance as a sandbox.
that is a production instance sandbox. It will be part of the production instance. Or is it different?
There is nothing called a sandbox in first place. It is a term that people use to refer to they might use to refer to it to a particular instance. Okay, so the sandbox is basically a concept. So you will see that we will explore that as part of our last component. So it is basically a component that you use to perform UI customizations. So if you want to change something in the look and feel of the application, or if you want to change something in the way or change certain bits in the application pages, that's when you use sandbox. But some people, what you said is right. Some people during the requirements gathering, they might say that in the sandbox dev instance or sandbox prod, or it doesn't make any sense. It's actually a term that people use along with the ERP cloud instance. Nothing more than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Prasad. See,
Yes.
you explained all the queries. Can we have those queries in? Will you share in the chat or?
Now I will share it to admin because I'll ask him to ask the admin to share it with you guys. But you have received the zip folder, right? You have received the first set of materials, and in that you have the bursting queries in there. So apart from this, if you are looking for these queries that I have used in the session, those queries are already available in the data model. You can copy it from there. You've got access to the instance, right? And in the instance, you have FP14 data model. You copy it from there. Bursting queries are already shared as part of the code pack. So if you are enrolled in the course, you would have received this code pack, and in that you have the bursting queries. Okay.
We'll check.
Yeah. Yes, Krishna.
Hi, Prasad, one question. Based on your experience in the past, is PaaS on the Fusion side, is it a common phenomena when you implemented, because I'm new, basically, this is my first implementation.
Yeah.
So is it a very common phenomena, or were there any places where they just went with vanilla and didn't use, meaning SaaS and not use PaaS?
3 out of 10 might need PaaS from what I have seen. 3
Okay.
or 2 out of 10. Others can directly work with SaaS. Yeah.
Okay, and can you kind of please tell just one example where it is absolutely necessary, apart from kind of creating any bolt-on kind of applications, what might be a driving factor? Because we are gearing for a major implementation. That is the reason why I'm just asking this question.
So there are multiple factors that decide whether you need a PaaS layer or not. You have to look at the business process of the client and see if there are any significant deviations from what product offers out of the box. That's point number one. And say, for example, if you're loading something into say, for example, the client is using EBS R12, which typically is the scenario, right? And say there are multiple sources from where the data is getting loaded into that. And there are some business process or workflows which are customized in the application. So if you go with the first option, say for example you're getting a bulk data which needs to be, or which requires heavy massaging before it gets into EBS.
Mm-hmm.
So you will notice that when you do the data load in cloud, you don't have any options to write validations within the cloud. So when you try to do a data load, it's plain Excel sheet upload sort of a thing. So in case you want to do some heavy customizations or heavy pre-processing or post-processing required. So pre-processing is one bit. When you're doing the data load, if you have to do pre-processing, you might need a PaaS layer, and post-processing might also need a PaaS layer. Let's say, for example, after the data is accounted or it's once it is in cloud, if there are few other systems which are looking forward to feeds from ERP or HCM cloud, that's when and at that point also you might need a PaaS layer help, because if you have to do the bulk extraction, right? You might most probably be able to handle the post processing with BIP reports as such, but yeah, that's one more scenario where you might need, or which might decide whether you need a PaaS layer or not. And say, for example, if some client is using Fusion Accounting Hub, wherein you have millions of lines going through some transformation process. So those are typical sample use cases where you might need a fast layer, but not every client needs it. Like I said, 3 out of 10.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And we will look at a specific component called disbursement payment file format customization guys. So this is, well, let's start it tomorrow. I think we just have 10 minutes left. So, or let me set the context for this one, and we will take it up tomorrow. So this particular component, disbursement payment file format customization, this is a pure financials concept, and you will come across this component only if you're working in a finance implementation project. And what is this all about? So if you look at the disbursement payment process that works in ERP Cloud, the way it works is in ERP Cloud, say for example, if the client has implemented ERP Financials Cloud, and if the client needs to pay some supplier, so say for example, what does this P2P cycle? So if you look at the P2P cycle, client will buy something from a supplier, and for which he needs to make a payment. So client would have raised a PO, he would have bought something from a supplier, and for that raw materials or for whatever goods or service that he has bought from supplier, we need to make a payment. And how does the payment happen? The payment happens from AP module, accounts payable module. In the accounts payable module, we usually create an AP invoice. And when you're creating AP invoice, again, you have multiple options available there. You can match it to a specific line in the PO as well. So as to mention, whom are we paying and against what purchase order we are paying. So we will create an invoice. And say, for example, you bought something which is worth $100 USD from supplier, say A. So you need to pay him $100. And what do you do for that? The PO process, purchasing process will complete first. So it's a PO that gets raised first, and it might start with a requisition as well if required. So this P2P process, Ravi will explain. A requisition, you create a PO against supplier A, and then you receive the goods. Okay, then you have the receipt. And after the receipt is done, you need to make a payment to supplier, right? So that's when you create an AP invoice in AP module. And after you create the invoice, you need to make a payment, right? And that's when you make a payment in AP module. And when you make a payment, yes, as part of the setups, you will configure what is your bank account. And when you load in the suppliers, you will also load in the supplier bank account details. But when you make the payment in ERP Cloud, where exactly are you doing all of these steps? You are doing it in ERP Cloud. When you make a payment in ERP Cloud, if it goes through successfully, what will happen is it will mark the invoice as paid, and it will mark once a payment is successful, or the payment process, in the sense the payment process in ERP Cloud is successful, invoice will be marked as paid. But does that mean $100 USD has been transferred from your bank account to supplier bank account or client? When I say you, client, ERP doesn't, it cannot log into your banking system and do a wire transfer or any transfer, right? So that's when, as part of a standard process, what happens is when you make a payment, if the payment type is, depending on the payment type, again, if it is a check gets generated. If it is an EFT, electronic funds transfer, what will happen is, as and when you make a payment, there will be a job that gets triggered called format payment instructions. Okay, forget about the job. So as and when you make the payment file gets generated. And what details will be there in this payment file? It will have all the details that you need to make a payment from your bank account to the supplier bank account. And this payment file format, and this payment, since we are disbursing the funds, it is called as disbursement payment file format, right? So so what should be the file format? Is there any specific format? So this file format, disbursement payment file format, depends on the agreement or it depends on the bank with which your client has an agreement. So clients usually get into an agreement with a bank, and they will have their bank account opened with, say, Wells Fargo or Citibank or some ABC bank. And that bank who needs to make a payment from your bank account, because you have your bank account with them, you need to tell them that take out $100 from my account and transfer it to supplier A bank account. And when you have to tell them to do so, you have to tell them in a specific format. So they will give you a specific file format. Say, for example, client has agreement with Wells Fargo. You go to Wells Fargo, client will go to them, and they will get the file format. And they will pass on the file format to you as a developer. And what they will say is, when this disbursement payment file gets generated, it should be generated in the format that Wells Fargo has given to them. And that's the same format that the client gives to you. So that's when, so out of the box, you have 100 plus or say 50 plus disbursement payment file formats. So there are many common file formats that are typically used, and you have out of the box templates available for them. But if there isn't, if the file formats given by Oracle does not match your requirement, what you do, you follow the same process that we have done today. You go to the disbursement payment file format and you click on customize, because this is also, after all, a report. Okay, you click on customize, and then a custom report gets downloaded, or a report gets copied over to the custom folder. And then if you edit it in the payment register, you have seen only one template, right? But if you, in the case of disbursement payment file formats, you will see around 50 plus templates. So you look at what template is closest to your requirement, you pick it up, and then you edit it, make the changes in the format to match it with the client, with the Wells Fargo format. And then after that, you need to go through a set of steps, or you need to perform 6 or 7 steps as part of the payment process to make your template used as part of the payment process. Okay. So customizing disbursement payment file format is a process in itself, and that is what you will be responsible for in real time. And all you do is, after you customize a payment file format, after you come up with a new format which matches with the Wells Fargo format, say, for example, you will upload it to the location or to the report as a custom layout, and you will ping functional consultant and you will tell them that, boss, I've created this custom payment file format. Please go ahead and use it in the setup. But since it's a training session and I can't ping anyone to help me with the setups, I will walk you through the setups as well, which might be a bit complicated for you, and you might easily get lost along the way, because there are around 6 or 7 steps that needs to happen. Like you need to first register it as a template, and then you have to define a format. You have to attach it to a bank account, and similarly, there are around 6 or 7 steps that we need to perform. I will show them in the session. We will perform these setups tomorrow as well, and we will, at the end of it, we will try to create an invoice and we will make a payment so that the payment file gets generated in Wells Fargo format. And I will also show you how to set up a transmission configuration. So what you can do is, yes, the payment file gets generated with a custom file format that we generated, but that file needs to be transmitted somewhere, right? It gets generated in the cloud. We need to transmit it to an SFTP location. You can either transmit it to UCM. As I mentioned, we know what UCM is and how to upload files to UCM, right? We did it with the help of Bursting. But in here, you have to set up something called as transmission configuration. And I'll show you how to set up those options. You can upload the file automatically to UCM or to SFTP. And what we have seen is most of the clients, they do ask us to upload the files to SFTP, because the banking systems typically, they won't be able to pull the files from UCM. So they ask us to upload to a specific SFTP location. So they give us the SFTP details. We set that up in the transmission configuration. And at the end of it, once we are done with all the process, we will create an AP invoice, we'll make the payment. And once it is done, a file in Wells Fargo format will be generated. It will be placed in the SFTP location. So from there, the bank system will come around, pick it up, and it will transfer the amount from your bank account to Sapere bank account. Okay. So if you find any difficulty in customizing the disbursement payment file format, I'll show you how to click on customize, how to download a template, how to make a change and upload it. If you find something difficult there, then you need to worry about it because it's something that you are responsible for in real time. But if you find some difficulty in following along the setups that we need to do after uploading the template, there is nothing that you need to worry about because you're not going to do it anyway in real time, except the transmission configuration. Transmission configuration is your responsibility. You need to set up a transmission configuration and you pass on the transmission configuration name to the functional consultant. Customizing the template, coming up with a new template, defining transmission configurations are your responsibilities. Rest everything else is functional consultant responsibility. Okay. So any questions, guys? Any questions in the process or what exactly are we going to do as part of this component? The disbursement payment file format customization. Every finance implementation will have this, or at least 9 out of 10. Okay, fine. We'll pick this up tomorrow, and yeah, we'll cover it. Yes, Krishna, please go ahead.
So I, sent an email to administrator. I think my Oracle account is not set up yet. So can you please help me to whom I should be sending the email? Because I've been in touch with Ravi and he kind of provided this link yesterday. So I have a link for these videos, but I think I don't have the account, meaning the Oracle cloud account where I can go ahead and start working on.
So this you're talking about this account, the ERP cloud instance account.
Okay.
Yeah. They will. So what happens is once you enroll in the course, you will receive an email, and in that email you will have this code pack, the first set of materials, and you will also have the login credentials in there. So if you have already paid the fees, tell them that ask them to send the onboarding email. So they will send an email which will have all those details, the instance link and the login credentials.
Got it. So I already paid the fee to Ravi. And so basically I need to send an email to the administrator requesting him or her telling that, so the payment was made, just provide me the online link, right?
That's correct. Yes. And if you don't get a response, wait for a day or if you don't get a prompt response from admin, you can call up Ravi and say that, I've paid the fees, please send the onboarding email. He will speed up the matters. Yeah,
sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone then. We'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you.